completely forgotten what number solve this is, but as you can probably see, this is a Halloween special solve. This is a SaaSOps Live virtual event where we, SaaSOps professionals, get together to talk about SaaSOps, APIs, Google Workspace, all the other SaaS applications you like. And this time we are doing a spooky SaaS because it's Halloween here in North America. You can see we are dressed up in our favorite costumes, and we're going to tell some scary, scary stories. Some of these stories are true. Some of them are just urban legend, folklore that has been passed down from sysadmin to sysadmin. Some of the names should be changed to protect the innocent and our professional reputations. So thank you everybody for joining, for dressing up and taking part. And I will like to ask anybody if they want to tell their spooky IT story first. If not, I will happily go and set the scene. Brian, are you ready with a story?
I can tell one that's actually I think a few of us may have ever encountered in the past, but it involves the mystery Ethernet cable. Yes. So crawl into the dark server rooms that are never well lit. If you do have a well lit server room, then good for you. But those of us that came from the times of the past have these darkly lit server rooms only because too much dust and bugs have collected in the fluorescent tubes above the server rooms. You start to get this dimly dark light. And our sysadmins have reported that there's this weird, strange computer that is logging in or connecting to our network, logging in, not just connecting to our network. And they don't know where it is. They can't find it. We have walked through the desks. We have crawled under desks to find all the missing M&Ms and peanuts from the snack room. And we finally decided to go all the way out to the IDF where this last computer seems to be connecting from. And we found this Ethernet cable. We traced it. We traced it through a spaghetti storm of Ethernet cables that would never make it to cable porn. It was a mess. It was a nightmare. And as you reach in there, you're always afraid that something's going to grab you back. And you're reaching through trying to trace these cables. And this cable, truth be told, went into the wall. No, I'm sorry. Not connected to a port in the wall. It just went through the wall into this little hole, into a room that had no doors. We walked around, we listened, we walked around, and we were just like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? There might be somebody trapped in there. There might be something. No, it literally was just this old badging computer that was forgotten. And during construction, the ghouls of building design walled off over a door, sealing this computer in, leaving it to connect to our network forever, and never getting any Windows updates. True story.
Wow, that is
construction removed the door and walled it off, thinking that another door was going to be put in somewhere else, and it never was. And this old computer that was used for creating badges and printing badges was just left in there, connecting to the network, and yeah, true story.
Wow, that's amazing to have a computer reach out almost from beyond the grave, walled off. Oh, well, I'm glad it ended safely, and it was able to be patched, I'm hoping, updated, removed, virtualized even.
Well, we haven't gotten into that room yet. Yeah, at some point, someone decided just to unplug the damn cable. But we spent way too much time thinking about this problem.
I'm more impressed, Brian, that you guys were able to know that there was a machine that shouldn't have been on your network.
Yeah, this was no, this is going on YouTube, so I won't mention the company name. But there was protocols that were being used, and this particular computer was because it was a shared computer, because everybody needed to log into it, they put some bypasses on it. And so that's what flagged their attention, was that there is a computer connected to the network that has some bypasses on it and we can't find it. So it raised a security concern as to like, where is this computer? Like, why is there bypasses on it?
Excellent. Thank you, Brian, for sharing. Anybody else got another scary story to tell? And I loved your delivery. That is the perfect way to start it. You've got to add that element of suspense and become a real good storyteller.
I have
I don't
two.
know if I can top Brian's scary telling of it, but I'll try. Basically, we moved into our new location. We got to build everything to spec as we wanted to. Every other organization I've worked for before now has had a broom closet that has a vent cut in the bottom door and an air conditioner that you have to change the water in once a week. So if you wanted to go on vacation for a week, you had to make sure who was emptying the water. That was scary enough, but the new server room, we can actually fit 5 racks in it. It's got a 3-ton air conditioner that's dedicated to that room. Biometrics to get you in and out of the door. This thing was awesome. Walked in the first day and kind of was looking at some of the blueprints and how everything was built, because my team lead was kind of the one who figured this out. And looking at these blueprints, I couldn't figure out something, and I kept hearing whooshing noises. Someone had installed the bathrooms right above our data center. And it's been a nightmare of mine ever since. There's probably about 5 toilets right above our server room that has a membrane supposedly between it and the drywall. It has leaked about 4 times since it's been installed. That's supposed to be an impenetrable membrane, but it's still it's my nightmare that I sleep with every night, waking up thinking that this room's going to be full of sewer one morning.
Oh no.
You're going to be the guy that gets famous on our SysAdmin for posting the story, and we're all going to laugh at you, and it's going to be horrible.
Well, any intelligent person would be like, why would you put water above a data center? But it's what we did. We are trying to move stuff as fast as we can to the cloud, just from a progression standpoint, on top of to help me sleep better at night. But
literally any project is like, any risks if we don't do this? Like, well, there's one.
Well, the funny thing is the membrane will stop any of the pipes from leaking down through it. But if any of the gaskets where the toilets connect to the floor leak, like if somebody flooded the floor up there, it would basically get around the membrane somehow. And that's why we've had leaks. We've had holes cut up in our server room. Yeah, it's one
You
of those
mentioned this is a
things
three. You mentioned it's a 3-ton AC unit. How the hell do you get that in there? Do you need like a forklift to deliver? I mean, that's the 3 tons. That's
3 tons of air conditioning capability. It's not actually 3 tons.
I know. I put the terminology in Zoom chat so people can see it.
Yeah, it was basically a server room of my dreams, and then just topped with a horrible rotten cherry.
All right, I have 2.
Yeah,
I have an actual scary one and then like a technical scary one. So my technical scary one, this is when I was a consultant for try to do mostly businesses, but inevitably would turn also into personal IT for said business owner, right? Like you don't say no to money when you're an independent consultant, and there are people with money that need tech problems solved. So you say yes. So I had this one client built a $20 million home with a theater room. I mean, the works, like panoramic, moon pool, all of it. Really big health nut, gym, yoga studio, sauna, and designed and built to block all and any signal of any sort whatsoever, internal or external, for your body, for health, obviously. Well, what that meant is no cell signal inside at all, like none, 0. Like you walk inside, gone, right? And no Wi-Fi, because all the internal walls were also built to that spec throughout the entire house. So our highest paying customer comes to us and goes, hey, I want my phone to work throughout my house, but I just want to block all the outside signal. I literally had to put an AP, an access point, in every room and hallway in the entire house because zero signal would penetrate any wall or door.
Wow.
So he went from having an impenetrable fortress of no signal to just cooking in Wi-Fi everywhere.
Oh my God. It's like completely beside the point. Oh,
Yeah.
jeez.
That was my oh, and we couldn't run. That was the other thing. We couldn't actually run Ethernet, like just jacks everywhere and do like in wall, because all the walls were actually built of like a special brick to limit all of this. And we were doing this after the fact, like the house was already built. Yeah, it was a nightmare. So that was number one. Number two was the time we found a body. So
Wait a minute.
Okay.
There's a bit of a transition there.
So we were talking about like random Ethernet cables, right? So I get, again, independent consultant, get a call from this ridiculously cool design firm, right? Southern California, view of the water from their location, old building, brick, like beautiful. They designed it all crazy cool, super modern, except all the IT stuff was horrible. It was like Cat 3 was in the walls, and they still had like phone jacks everywhere. So you had to try to run internet over phone. And so we go into the server room and they're like, hey, the server room's a rat's nest. I'm like, yeah, figures, right? And they had like 150, 200 like endpoints through the thing. So I was like, yeah, okay, it's a little closet. It'll probably be disgusting. Open it up. Sure enough, cables everywhere. I wish I had a picture on me. It was the worst rat's nest I have ever seen. Nothing made sense. There were just entire bundles of Ethernet that we didn't know where they went, but they were like hanging in the walls, right? It took almost a week of like 4 of us to clear this out. Halfway through clearing it out, we start smelling something. It's like, that doesn't smell right. So get some gloves, keep going. We end up finding a literal rat's nest that was about, I don't know if you can see my arms, it was about 3.5 feet around, just like packed in with paper and stuff. And like when we pulled some cables, it like broke open. And you remember the scene in Lord of the Rings when they're walking and all the skulls come out and there's just this ocean of bones that they like kind of swim in? It was like that, just bones and body parts and just all sorts of fun rat things. Who knows how, I mean, been there a long time. Instantly just filled the room with dust and it was horrible. So we closed the door, called an like hazmat company, had them come out and just clear the whole room. And then we went and ran all the cables. Those are my horror stories.
Yeah. I think everybody could visualize what that would look like. It
was like hoarder style rat's nest, like in the corner. It was awful. It was so bad.
Ugh. What was that? Was that the rat's nest? Oh.
I mean, that photo's not wrong though.
Somebody quickly shared a screen. Okay.
Yeah, it was some found a body.
Oh, right. Yes, somebody in a rat's nest of cables. Yes, I'm sure there's hundreds of stories of those horrors of those netted rat nests of cables, but you found the literal rat's nest in cables. So I'm sure there are a lot of them. Who's next? Who has another story to tell?
I can't top those, but I have one.
Yeah, cool.
So I used to work for a BPO. It's a business process outsourcing company. So basically, if there's a part of your company you don't want to do, they would do it for you. And I worked, the program I worked for was a large online learning management. That was our client that we worked with. So they paid us to do tier 1 support for their product. At the time, I worked up to be a team lead, so kind of a manager. And one day, one of my employees comes up to me and says, did you get my email? And it's like, not yet. Let me look. I looked at it. He had sent this email with a link in it. It's like, not too bad. I was like, okay, let me click on the link. He rickrolled. It was a rickroll link, basically. Then we looked at the 2. He did that to the entire company, the client we had. So the CEO, everybody on down, he rickrolled the entire company. luckily we had a long engagement with this client. They didn't end up dropping us. They didn't actually want us to fire this guy. Well, they did. They originally wanted us to fire him, but we talked him off of it because he was actually one of our SMEs, really supposedly smart individuals. But yeah, so he rickrolled the entire client that we had that was paying us lots and lots of money to employ him and to, a whole program of about 80 employees. So it was not a good deal, but it was a horror story. Like we didn't own the servers. We couldn't get this back in case, like, he came right after he sent it. He thought it was so funny. So anywhere else we might be able to get it back before, CEO level people look at it because they're kind of slow at looking at email sometimes. But nope, we didn't own any of that. We were using their systems. So it went out and they saw it and it made for an awkward conversation. So that was a horror story for us. Like, wow.
Yeah, there is very little technological trickery that you can use to get emails back. Once they have left the silo, that is it. They are going to hit their destination. I always chuckle when somebody sends you a message and then you get that Outlook message a few minutes later saying, this user would like to retract this message. It's like, I'm on Gmail. It doesn't work like that. Retracting the message only works in Outlook, the client, because it actually deletes the message. But yeah, that's, I guess, if you have was it delete send in Gmail, you can save yourself some of those things, or have access to GAM or Enterprise and the investigation tool to bulk delete those messages. But yeah, wow, I'm glad he was able to maintain his job, and Rick Astley got a few more hits.
Yeah, a few hundred hits on that one. That was nice.
Yeah, some more royalties.
Yeah, and it's the largest online learning management system out there, so it got quite a few people, unfortunately.
The good old days of simple Rick rolling.
Yeah, that's why you hide your big distros from your clients.
Yes, yeah.
I don't even know how he found it. It wasn't like on it or anything. Like, it wasn't something that somebody sent out. He just found it and rickrolled the entire company. It was awesome.
Excellent. Any other horror stories that people have? If not, I have one to share. Would you like to hear my theoretical urban legend, folklore?
Oh, please do.
You're that old that you have folklore after yourself?
Yes, I would like to think this is a hypothetical story to protect the innocent and the reputation of companies new and old. This comes from the old world, back across the Atlantic, in an old town that the Romans first used and populated. There's a town called London, and there was a small company that had a small office. It rented one floor of a building. It actually sublet that floor off of the original tenants. And one day, the relatively new IT person was sitting there. It was on a Friday lunchtime, and he saw the building electrician walk past, and he knew the guy, and he said, "Hey, Bob, have a good weekend." And Bob said, "Oh, I'm not going to have a good weekend. We're shutting down the building power to do all of that maintenance work we emailed you about." And this person was like, "What? What email? We never got any email." He's like, "Yeah, they sent it to all the tenants." "Oh, but we're not the tenant," he said. "We're the subtenant." "Oh my God, the tenant knew about this but didn't let us know. What are we going to do? It's midday. We're a small little company. We've got servers in the closet that need to be running all weekend to receive data from our clients. What are we going to do?" He says, "Well, power's getting cut off at 8 o'clock in the morning. You better think of something." So this new IT person quickly spoke to a couple of other people, got the finance director involved, and they sat down and they came up with an amazing MacGyver plan. It's very difficult in central London, as you might expect, to come up with these things, but they were able to source them. They got together, they all went into this little closet that acted as the server room, and they identified which devices needed to be running. The internet modem, the router, and then the server. and then they quickly ran to a Maplin's type place, Radio Shack would have been kind of place. And they ran through with a trolley and they picked up everything off of the shelf that they could think of: extension cables, sockets, power leads, a UPS. And then one of the other guys rang around all of the tool hire places that he could think of to find a generator. Do you know how difficult it is to find a generator in central London at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon? It's incredibly difficult, but they managed to do it. They got a generator. They managed to get the generator up onto the roof. They managed to open the fire door, run an extension cable down the fire escape into the server room, where they spliced a whole bunch of cables together. They knew the power from the generator was going to be dirty, so they plugged the generator into the UPS, and they labeled up which cables from the existing rack needed to go into the UPS that they plugged an extension lead on. And then they stayed up late and they shut down everything, and then they plugged everything into the generator. And then the next morning, one of the local guys came in 7 o'clock, ran up to the roof, and then he pulled that generator cable. And do you know what happened? It sprang into life. And everything, and the server came back online. The building power was shut off, but they were running. There we are, it's Saturday morning early in central London, and there's a generator chugging along on the roof of this building with an extension cable running down the fire escape into the closet, powering these machines. 10 o'clock, the client sends the data, unaware that it's being powered from a generator on the roof. And then they were able to shut it down and wait for the building power to be reconnected. And then on the Monday morning, the team got together, patted themselves on the back and said, we need a data center because we can no longer run things in our own office.
That's right.
That's how it started.
I thought you said you promptly turned into a 2-week notice.
But yeah, that's a horror story, how things can spiral out of control. You think, oh, well, it's a small office, we'll just, run things in the closet. And then you discover that something mission critical that is running in your closet, doesn't have multiple internet connections, doesn't have multiple power cables. That's why you have to move it to a data center, or preferably the cloud, which is where we all live. So that's it's an urban legend. So I've been told.
Very good. Rose has a kitty.
Any other scary IT horror stories that people have heard, experienced themselves, seen?
I got one.
Oh, wait, Brian's got one. Brian with the turkey on his head.
Yes.
As they do in that's how they celebrate Halloween in Canada, isn't it? By putting turkeys on their head.
Yeah, basically, we had our Thanksgiving a few weeks ago. Now we're just chugging along to American Thanksgiving, so we're just getting ready.
Excellent.
Waiting for the border to open up.
What is it like to be in a country that celebrates 2 Thanksgivings?
I'm not really a turkey person, so can't really say. But
Make corned beef. It's much better.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So we all love SSO, single sign-on, and we all have to eventually rotate the SAML signing certificates. So this comes from my previous life to protect the innocent. So you think it'd be a good idea to develop a process around, hey, like when SAML signing certificates expire, what do you do and how do we rotate it? So they had developed a process to, every time we sign into the super admin account, we will rotate the password and save that into a password manager. And I think it'll be smart to only have one super admin account. So right before the certificate had expired, they thought it would be, let's generate a new certificate from our ADFS server. Okay, so now the old certificate no longer works. Let's log into the admin console. What happens? The password that was saved into the vault was incorrect, and because it was only super admin account, they couldn't even recover the super admin account. So contact Google support. They're like, oh, we need to update your DNS. Turns out DNS is managed by a third party. So how long does it take? 24, 48 hours? Well, you have some workloads that's on GCP. So you are really, really screwed. So always have 2 super admins, and do not rotate the password unless you absolutely, absolutely have to. Just set up 2-step. That's good enough.
That is a horrible situation for that hypothetical company to have got themselves in. But yes, always need to have a break glass account. Something that's, a Titan security key is a very good way of protecting that account and keep that Titan security key in a safe. As long as you don't rotate and destroy the keys to open the safe, then you're going to be okay. Yep, there's Dominic showing a Titan security key. That is difficult when there we go. Difficult when you don't control your DNS as well, so you can't get back in. Right. Any other horror stories?
I have another horror story that I inflicted on other people. I wasn't the recipient of it, but I was the giver. Basically, in my junior SYSADMIN days, when I first got out of college, I got my first full-time job at I'm gonna say it was a company that billed people for electricity. And I was a Windows guy, but I also did Linux, Unix a little bit. And their entire Active Directory was actually run through, I believe it was called Samba on the Linux environment. And so basically I had to start figuring out how to use it, how to get rid of people, clean up stuff after somebody leaves. So I started writing this awesome bash script that would go through and take people's data and delete it and get rid of it. I was smart enough to test it on a non-production machine, tested as best I could. It was now ready for production. And I'd probably been using it for about a month. And the one time I went to go and run it, it didn't look like it was running. So I pushed enter on my keyboard again, as you normally do on Linux, to see if you get the next line on the command shell. And what I realized is that I inputted no username. So it took a blank as the username. So it went to the etc/users directory and started deleting everything, as opposed to the username that I was supposed to input. So I didn't sanitize my input to ensure, and it started nuking the entire user etc users folder. And I think it took me about a good 3 minutes to realize what was going on. And you would be amazed how many files can be deleted in 3 minutes. And it was the scariest feeling I have ever had, that I was just like, something's going on around you, because you start to hear people talk, phone calls start coming into your boss, and you're just like, oh crap. And then I had to basically come clean and explain what happened. I had to figure out what happened first. Then I had to explain it, and basically that deep feeling sunk in. It's like, am I getting fired? Am I lucky enough? This organization did have a backup that actually ran persistently. We lost about 20 minutes worth of data. So anybody file that were working for the last 20 minutes were gone, but we were able to get most of them back. But it was probably one of the scariest things as an admin, to ensure that you're not just checking for, when you're writing and programming, just what you think is going to be in there. You need to start checking for what might be put into there. A username that doesn't exist, checking to make sure the user exists first before just assuming they exist. Yeah, it was scary. I did not lose my job, but I did not feel like my boss had great confidence in me after that. So I did find a job about 3 months later. And I never told anyone about that.
Wow, that would be a terrifying feeling to know that something was happening, and it's like, how do I stop it? What do I pull? Where do I stop the process? Oh dear. But you were very lucky that they were so advanced that they had continuous backup, either through shadow copy or something, because backups in those days are very like, everything gets
This
backed up at
was
12 o'clock at night.
20 years ago, and that was not heard of, to be completely honest. Like, they paired with a local company that had data services within the same city. So it was their way of keeping backups local, but not within the same building. And again, because like I said, they sold electricity, or billed people for electricity, I should say. They had a lot of money. So ensuring that their systems kept up from idiots that do stupid things like me, it was why they had that service.
Yeah, this is why you also need least privilege as well. So you can only have access to what you need. Yeah, I've heard of many a horror story of somebody mistyping a command line, and or being in the wrong location. I've even done that myself in the Google admin panel. It's if you're trying to do something, it's very easy not to be in the OU that you think you're working on and be in the root domain. I've done that, accidentally applied to a policy to the whole company at like 6 o'clock at night. But no, it was 9 o'clock on a Sunday night. It's like, I'm going to apply something for the UK for the following morning, not realizing that I've applied it to everybody, so it impacts people instantly in APAC, and they start reporting problems. You have to reverse out. So yeah.
The worst part is when you hear the phone ring and and then the phone rings again, and then again, and you're just like, oh my God, it just starts sinking in.
Yeah. And then you have the problem is, do I solve the problem or do I tell people about the problem? Do I update the tickets and update the users that we have a problem, or do I concentrate, on the problem? So yeah, can be difficult. Well, I'm glad you survived, and saw through a lot of perseverance, have been able to carry on your career in the last 20 years, and it hasn't barred your development too much. It's always a good way to learn as well, is by breaking stuff. So everybody is allowed at least one delete something event in their life, I think. All right, it's half an hour of scary stories. Any others to share? If not, we can end here, and we'll do a poll after we've pressed stop. I think Chris Tucker probably has a story.
I do. It's a pre-SaaS, why we like SaaS so much story.
Oh, excellent.
It was, back when I was working for a company that was all Mac. Most people had Exchange. We did not. So we used a third-party tool called Curio, which worked well. I hated having multiple accounts on my file servers and my mail servers. So I was like, I'm gonna use Mac OS server. Well, it was at that time OS X server, and their open LDAP platform, and connect these two things together. And so Curio bounced off of that. One day, mail was all getting bounced back to senders to our domain because it was on premise, and it's getting bounced back. I'm like, everything's here. And I went in and looked at the user list, and it was empty because Open LDAP had broken on them. At that point, Mac liked to break that a lot, and you had to rebuild it. So, but it was nice, like, cool, there's no email coming in, and we had nothing. We ended up doing a mail gateway at that point, but it's always those things where until you experience it, you don't know how to prevent it. And it's still always fun when people don't, there goes my mustache. Yep. So that was a fun one. Nothing like waking up in the morning and being like, why is there no mail coming in? Or why is your boss calling you saying our clients are wondering where our email is?
We're so spoiled with SaaS and collaborative tools now. Like the OG days of running your own email servers. I mean, it's not even that long ago. Like, we're all old enough to remember that. Like, wasn't that long ago. Is crazy.
Spooling services have to be the best thing in the world, so you can actually do maintenance on your email server and like just know that everything's going to be spooling up, and just as soon as you turn it back on, everything's working, because it just dumps back into your Exchange environment. You can just watch it be like throwing in. love spooling services.
Chris, your DNS or your email story reminded me of another folklore story that I heard of about DNS, where a company was going to move from one AWS instance to a new WAS instance for their website. And they emailed the hosting company. It was also this hypothetical story company's domain registrar and DNS host. And they said, can you change our DNS records, for the domain from being this to go to this? An engineer did it, and then nothing worked. A ticket was sent, went to the hosting company, they updated the DNS, and then everything else stopped. No emails were coming through. So in the story, the IT person comes into work and people are saying frantically, there's no emails being sent. There's no emails being received. What's going wrong? And then this person has a quick look at the MX records and finds there is now no longer any MX records for your domain. And you think, oh my God, what has happened? Then you find out, you do some research and you find out that another part of the company has asked the hosting company to do this DNS update. But they didn't do the DNS update. What they had actually done was replace all of the DNS records.
Oh no!
For everything. So they hadn't just updated. They were using what were they using? What's the DNS on Linux? Bind. They were using Bind, which I think is just a text file. Instead of updating the text file, they just replaced the text file with like a vanilla one with just this one entry. So after about an hour and a half of updates and phone calls, got everything replaced. Next day, what's the decision they make? Take a DNS away from anybody, bring it back in company, and make it that only 2 people that are very, very clever can update and control DNS. So yeah,
I can't imagine, because once you take those records out, it would be negatively cached. Anybody that looked it up would be like, no, these don't exist. So negative cache exists for DNS. I say, hey, I don't need to look this up again. I looked this up an hour ago and it said there's no records. And it says in their zone file to cache records for 2 days. So now for the next 2 days, even though the records are there, it might not get looked up.
Yeah. Thankfully, with some of the services now, Cloudflare and Google DNS, things are a lot quicker. But yeah, back in the day, DNS updates were a 2-day affair. So yeah, you could have a lot of downtime. Dominic, you had a scary story?
Not really, just an update to that. The DNS can still, the domain host can still update the DNS server, as in not to the server that you're posting, but point everybody to a new DNS or DNS host if you make them. And that's still scary. That's that's the weak point in my book. So that's the single point of failure in any company. And that was the Facebook story, I guess, 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Practically.
There was if anybody used to watch Tech TV back in the day, and the screensavers, Leo Laporte and then Steve, whoever the security guy is, he does Security Now podcast for the last number of years. They did a TV show in 2002. They did a whole segment about DNS being the Achilles heel of the internet. And it still is, even after all this time, even though there's sort of secure DNS and other ways of protecting it, it still is the weakest point.
I feel like DNS is the Achilles heel of the internet, and clocks are the Achilles heel of computers.
Clocks, yes, yeah. You add a second here and there, and nothing works, as Dominic has found out.
Don't forget printers.
Oh, Dominic, it was Brian, wasn't it? Who was having the problem?
It was me. Rose had the problem.
Oh, Rose,
I talked about the time that we got from.
No, I am actively having this problem, so it's fine.
Brian had me about this 2 years ago or something. So that's that's how this ended.
I mean, if we're gonna go with the stat of worst tech that has existed the longest, so it should be the best, printers. I mean, the printing press has literally been around longer than any other form of technology, and yet
You know,
Yeah,
honestly, I
you
feel
would
like
be
those old printing presses are way more reliable than printers. So
if you knew
we've
how
only
printers
made
actually
things worse.
worked, you would be surprised that any print ever came off of a printer. Like it's like literally like magic happens inside that printer, and they're amazed. The manufacturers of prints come out of it. They're like, holy crap, that worked.
Yep.
It's funny,
got
Colin,
one-
you
I've got one
mentioned
wild
Steve
one
and
for you.
Leo. That Security Now is the show they used to be on all the time. And Steve Gibson is actually the
That's it.
person who coined the phrase spyware. Like basically he did SpinRite and all those tools that you use to save your disk back in the days when spinning disks used to be an actual issue. Very, very smart guy. If you guys ever want to watch a good podcast, him and Leo. I'm not a fan of Leo, but I'm a fan of Steve Gibson.
Yeah. Incredibly clever people. Brian, you want to close us off with another story?
Sure. Follow me on this one. We had the case of the self-exploding server room. The server room was created with a very large UPS system, a dual pane UPS system. Now, when I'm talking about UPS system, I'm talking about the giant panel systems that have racks of what look like car batteries inside of them. A very large UPS system. This is the one where you open up one of the panels and you have this system here that looks like you're about ready to launch a nuclear missile. Because in order for you to bypass the electrical system, you have to do one key in here, do a flip, and put another key in there and do another flip. And it's like this whole procedure, but it's designed so that you can't accidentally cross wires and stuff like that. You follow the procedure, you turn key A, you flip a switch, you turn key B, you flip another switch, and these big lock things go and lock your switches in place. That system works fine as long as it's kept cool. Now, the giant cooling unit that was also in that same server room was magically hooked up to the same UPS unit. Now that makes sense, right? That makes sense because if the power ever goes out, you definitely want the UPS system to work and you want the cooling unit to keep running. Yes, of course you want that to happen. So what wasn't hooked up to this UPS unit, what wasn't hooked up to this giant system of redundancy was the chiller unit up on the roof that provides the cool to the cooling unit, the crack unit, if you will, that's actually inside the server room. So lo and behold, the power goes out. The server room stays alive because the UPS does its job. But the crack, the chiller unit up on the roof, with all the water or whatever system, the fans up on the roof that actually cool off all the fluid that runs down to keep the everything cool. The cooler unit up on the roof will go out with the power, but the fanning system, the distribution air blowing system, will stay on. And what happens with that pump is when things are not getting cooled off, it just cycles hot water. And so the cooling unit becomes a heater. And if we don't get in there fast, it will start to cook the room. Now, the servers themselves are actually fairly resilient. We all know that if a server room gets up to 80 degrees, it's not the best for, network switches and servers. We don't want it to keep it that hot for that long, but they'll be fine. What actually starts to happen is the UPS unit itself starts to heat up because all those batteries are suddenly being tasked with electricity and pulling data out. So all the batteries start to heat up. The cooling unit starts blowing hot air, and the whole room just turns into this disaster. And I'll speed up during this story because we're out of time here. But what ended up happening is the UPS unit itself blew up. Circuit boards, capacitors caught fire, set off the fire alarm. Fire department had to show up and couldn't get into that room because it's like secure and badge access only. I was 10 seconds away from watching firemen take their axes and knock down the server room door just to get in there to make sure nothing was on fire before I was able to get access to get in there and turn it off. So yeah.
Wow.
This is a self-exploding server room.
Yeah, you have to think out every element of your redundant systems. There's no point having a UPS if it's not properly, everything's not properly configured on it. Well, thank you ever so much for people spending the last 45 minutes listening to this, listening to our horror stories. Obviously, they are all folklore, urban legends, names, locations have been changed to protect our reputations and the innocent. Stay safe this Halloween. Don't eat too much candy. Stick around for a poll so we can vote on who has the prettiest costume, who has the best costume. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week or 2 weeks' time for another Solve SaaSOps Life virtual event.